Hello, everyone, and welcome to Couples Movie Night. I'm one of your hosts, Kaylee,
And I'm your other host, Zach.
and we're going to be talking about things we like about movies, things we hate about movies, things that movies we like, movies we absolutely abhor.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we wanted to start this is because we usually have such vivid and different perspectives on movies, or we'll go into a movie and come out of it with the same rating for the film, but we liked it for different reasons. And we started to talk about uh, the couple's perspective on film, the male female perspective, if you will. So we really wanted to go ahead and talk about those things in a podcast with our favorite movies.
So, we're going to start out by talking about, do you want to talk about the structure?
I think that every week we're going to try to hit at least one blockbuster because we know that those are the movies that people are interested in reviews on at the moment because they want to know whether they should spend their money maybe at Redbox or even in the movie theater. So we are going to talk about a blockbuster a week. Then we're going to go into what we'd like to call the underdog segment, which will be to discuss some lovely indie movie that we have found or friends have suggested, or just something that didn't quite make everyone's radar, but is definitely worth your time to pick up if you can, if you are movie buffs like us. And finally, we're going to have the best of the rest segment, which will discuss movies that either we both hated, both loved. One
Or
of
some
us hated it,
combination?
one of us loved it. But they're just those kind of movies where you know that they're not good, and here's the reasons why.
They're junk
Or
food movies.
yeah, but I mean, like, even okay. I mean, like, an
They're
example
not
for
good for you, but sometimes they're good for your stomach.
and well, I
They're
mean,
like good for your soul.
I think like an example for me is like I grew up watching Grind. I thought that was a great film.
Right.
You watch that film now, and it's not
It's
good.
awful.
It's not
It's
a good film.
unwatchable.
Yes, absolutely. What about for you?
Probably Empire Records hits the top of my list
It's
as
such
far
a
as
good
junk food
movie
movie is
though,
concerned.
but
It's such a great movie, but there's no reason for anyone to like it.
yeah,
The
I don't
editing
know.
is awful. The acting is not great, but it's a fun movie, and I think that's what's important in the end. So, and we'll also in the best of the rest, we are also just going to completely and totally make fun of movies that we really really hate. So if you really like the movie, then send us your thoughts about it. But I guarantee you, we probably don't care.
Yeah, we would definitely appreciate anybody's perspectives on these movies that we review. We're going to be putting these up once a week, although we haven't really settled on a day yet. So forgive us for this sort of.
It'll be one of the 7 days of this week. So.
Forgive us for sort of being unprepared for this particular, you know, inaugural
We took
podcast.
notes. We did. We took notes on every movie and may or may not have drank our weight in grapefruit vodka. Anyway, so obviously the blockbuster, that's the one we're talking about 1st. We chose Bad Moms for this. It's kind of a decent movie. It has an hour and 40-minute run time, so if you don't like it, you don't have to sit through that much of it. IMDb gave it a rating of 6.2 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 59%, so not awful, not great. Kind of middle of the road almost. Metascore was 60. The budget for it was 20 million, and they definitely made it back because the box office made 179.4 million. So that's, I can't even do math, but that's like, I want to say 80 times its budget. So I mean that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it was it's starring Mila Kunis, obviously, Catherine Hahn, Kristen Bell, Christina Applegate, and Jada Pinkett Smith is in there. It's very mom centric. It's directed and written by John Lucas and Scott Moore.
Can you kind of explain to me what else they've done?
You
I feel
know,
like that's kind of important.
I'm just pulling it up on my phone because
Okay.
I did not.
Well, while he's doing that, I'll talk about this did receive an R rating. through that, was it the MPAA or whatever?
MPA.
Yeah, the MPAA. They rated it an R. I definitely agree with that rating. I feel like probably young kids should not be seeing this movie. There's no humor that the kid's going to get, and it's not going to be beneficial at all. There's lots of language and some intense sexual scenes. And it was released June 29th, 2016.
So these guys wrote the Hangover films.
Oh, that explains a lot.
They directed 21 and Over. You remember that film?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're
really into like the party movies.
Yes.
It sounds like.
Very much so.
Which is, yeah, it's interesting. It's also interesting because I feel like I don't think that I've ever seen those top 3 actresses. I don't think I've ever seen them in something like this, like, party movie sort of.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, it is a party movie. It's very much a party movie. They are constantly sort of blowing off their motherly responsibilities and going out to drink and finally just sort of becoming unchained. But this one, more so than maybe The Hangover or 21 and Over, has some real life aspects to motherhood, especially in our day.
It's not necessarily just like this fantastical, with The Hangover. It's very fantastical in the way that the whole premise of like losing your friend in Vegas, it can happen, but it usually doesn't happen. And why they didn't just call the police is really confusing to me. So
do you want to kind of explain the plot of the film?
Yeah, I can do that. So, Bad Moms is essentially about a mother named Amy who essentially catches her husband in a compromising position and decides that she doesn't really want to be that, that like 2016 American idea of a good mom anymore. So, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, she has a really, really busy life. She doesn't really get a lot of appreciation for what she does as far as being a mom. She works really hard at a job where she gets no appreciation. She's constantly shuttling her very entitled and privileged kids back and forth to their various extracurricular activities, and on top of that, she's expected to be a mother in the home and clean and cook and do everything else. And eventually, at some point, the PTA president, who is played by Christina Applegate, pushes her just a little bit too far, and she snaps, and she sort of falls in with
the bad crowd.
Yeah, well, I mean, she falls in with the quote-unquote bad single mom played by Catherine Hahn, who is hilarious.
And then the just absolutely adorable Kristen Bell.
Yes.
As well.
And so, do you want to continue?
Oh, yeah. So, essentially, they decide that Mila Kunis' character, Amy, is going to become the PTA president because Christina Applegate has totally and completely lost all chill. And, not to spoil anything, but she runs against Christina Applegate. I think it's a fun movie.
There are aspects of it that I thought were really, really fun. So why don't you tell me what you disliked about the film, and I'll go into what I disliked.
Well, I'll tell you the rating, and then I'll tell you how I got there. Okay. Sound good? So I did a 7 out of 10. And I know you're definitely going to disagree because we've spent so much time arguing about this movie.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. So, some of the reasons why I really enjoyed this movie is because it wasn't super bad. It wasn't The Hangover. It wasn't any of those male-centric comedies that I feel like have just been replayed and replayed over the past, 10, 20 years. I really enjoyed the feminine aspect of it, and, and especially seeing women who you kind of revere as being, like, higher-tier mothers in real life, like Kristen Bell, real mom. Mila Kunis, real mom. I don't know about Catherine Hahn, but I'm pretty sure she's a mom. And we kind of assume that because they have so much money and they are so rich that they must be like the best moms ever. So it's kind of fun to watch them struggle with everyday things. And of course, it's hard to talk about this when you're not a mom and you're not a parent and you don't quite understand the difficulties that I guess go along with that. Um, but yeah, so I thought it was a good performance all around. It was a fun movie to watch.
There were aspects of the film that I really disliked. Overall, I did think it was fun. I'm really really happy to see uh, the ladies kind of get in on the. I don't know if I want to call them like the gross out type
Raunchy.
humor, sort of raunchy. Yeah,
Raunchy.
I mean it's just nice that it's not Will Ferrell anymore, and it definitely gives a different perspective. And I thought that those moments were really funny. I
Yeah,
thought
the part where Catherine Hahn is like explaining how to work with an uncircumcised penis, probably one of my favorite moments.
that was a really funny part, and anybody that gets grossed out by it but laughed at Will Ferrell, eating cat poop on a steak in Anchorman. That's I don't know how you can find one thing funny and one thing not funny. Obviously they had it's the writers of The Hangover and everything, so obviously they had these huge, massive, awesome party scenes that just looked like a lot of fun, and I bought the story. I feel like it was small enough that I could buy it. What I didn't like is that almost every character in the movie I started to notice is I would call them caricatures. They're not really people in some sense. I mean, Amy really is, but a lot of the characters are just that. If you had a stereotype of them, that would be what they are. You have the PTA president that's mean and super rich and she's got all the stuff, and you've got the single mom who's a bad mom and she runs around and does whatever she wants to. She's sort of unchained. Um, what I found the most disturbing, honestly, and I don't want to get on a soapbox with it or anything, but I found the treatment of men within the script in the film a little bit disturbing. So yes, one of the disturbing things I found is that the male characters were written almost in Edward Cullen-esque impossibility. The dad, Sam, or is that his name?
No, I
his
just
name was
call him
Sam
Dr.
on
Sam on from New Girl. So.
yeah, but he was admittedly an idiot and a terrible, terrible father. But it does get a little bit annoying when I feel like sometimes Hollywood kind of mashes that into your face. I'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
One of the things that I disliked completely was that her son, who I believe is the oldest, is also an idiot, and she spends basically no time with him. Amy had to at the tender age of 20 give up her life that she wanted to have. She didn't get to have her 20s, so you would think that there would be a little bit more credence or value based upon that child in particular. Not that you favor any of your children anymore. I just found it a little bit unrealistic. Um, let's see. Did I have anything else to say?
The interesting thing for me was having kind of a lazy father who was there, and who obviously at least kind of sort of cared about his kids. Like that would be an accurate statement. I know he makes the joke about not liking the little girl Jane quite as much, but he really does love his kids. So it's really interesting to see that as opposed to, we've seen so many father figures recently, even 30 years back, were the cold, disapproving father types. And nothing that the main character did was ever good enough. So it's kind of interesting to see that totally reversed, where Dylan gets a D and the dad, is like, oh, well, high five, good job, you know.
I have my own qualms about that, but just to, sort of answer your question of what I thought of this movie, I gave it a 6 out of 10. It probably deserves higher from me, but there's just parts in it that I really didn't like. There were hilarious parts. I mean, Wanda Sykes makes an appearance, and even though I'm not a huge fan of her comedy, she stole the show. Catherine Hahn was hilarious.
Oh man, that grocery store scene though. That was so great.
It's nowhere near as it was in the commercials a lot. I remember we ran the trailer a lot at work, and so it's funnier than it seems, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. But so overall, you gave it a 7 out of 10. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Go and check it out. It's on your streaming devices. Although I don't think it's on Netflix.
I'm sure it's on Redbox as well.
Yeah, and you can go pick it up on Redbox.
But I don't think it's on. I think you're right. I don't think it's on Netflix or Hulu yet.
So we're gonna go ahead and segue, move into our underdog film.
Underdog.
The film is Tonight You're Mine, or alternatively called You Instead. It was created in 2011, directed by David Mackenzie, who also directed Hell or High Water, and it was written by Thomas Leverett, whose real big credit was basically this film. So it's also starring Luke Treadway and Natalia Tena. Is that how you say her name?
Well, it's Tonks from Harry Potter.
She also plays Osha in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, I guess that's probably a more mainstream.
No,
I don't watch that much Game of Thrones stuff. So it does have a runtime of 120 minutes. It's by far the shortest film that we are reviewing today. On IMDb, it has a rating of 6.7 out of 10, which I think is just a little harsh. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 40. Metascore gave it a 41. The budget was $1,231,970, and they made a grand total of $102,492. So this really flopped. Yeah. Which is really awful because it's honestly one of our favorite films.
Yeah, actually, can I speak to that? This film is the reason why we decided to make this podcast. We talked about this. Oh, when did we watch this?
At least. The first time I saw it was immediately before my 21st birthday. So it was like a week before my 21st.
So yeah, it's been
3 years?
It's 3 years.
No, it's been over 3 years. 24.
Oh yeah, duh. So this has been an idea long in the making, and we've wanted to talk about this film. We've tried to show it to some people. Some people have gotten into it, very few. We consider it an underdog, and we hope that more people will sort of get into it. So,
do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can just go ahead and go through the plot if you want me to. It follows, what's his name? Tom? Adam.
We keep calling him Tom even though his name's Adam.
It's because his real name isn't even Tom. He just looks like a Tom.
He looks like a Tom.
It follows Adam and Morello. They are two distinct musicians in different bands at Tea in the Park, which is a music festival in Scotland. There's basically a little altercation between Morello's band, the Dirty Pinks, and Adam's band. What are they called? The Mix?
I think so. Something like that.
They were unimportant. They weren't as cool as the Dirty Pinks, but there's basically a little altercation between them, and this really cool character called the Prophet comes up, and he makes them pray together to for the success of the music festival and everything else, and they continue to have an argument with each other. So he takes handcuffs out of his pocket and he handcuffs them together and then just disappears. And so it sort of follows their journey trying to find some way to get these handcuffs off of themselves while they're there at Tea in the Park, and they end up having to go to each other's performances and bands that they want to see, their respective bandmates being frustrated with them because they are
handcuffed together. There's nothing they can do,
and their respective significant others who do show up eventually and have to deal with their person that they love is now chained to a different person, and they're both antagonistic and selfish and frustrating, but it's a romantic sort of comedy, so
yeah, kind of.
You can kind of guess the end before you even start the film. But you want to talk about it?
Alert.
Yeah.
So it has an R rating, which I almost don't think is fair. There's maybe a tiny bit of language, and maybe it's just that it would be kind of above kids' heads. But I feel like PG-13 would have been a better rating for it. I gave it a 9.7 out of 10. Like I said, this is one of my favorite movies. My favorite thing about it is that it's so unassuming and it's such a simple plot. Nowadays people feel like they need this very complex, almost like Seven or Fight Club or, some plot like that to get a good movie. But sometimes you just need to handcuff two really selfish characters together and see what happens, what comes out of that. I, there's a line in there when the prophet says, "You cram 1,000 people together without music, and what do you get? A riot." And I feel like it's such a pure part of this film because the two main characters are so antagonistic and they really, they're just feisty. Their nature is just so feisty. And without the actual music that kind of bonds them together, they are just so mean and awful to each other. It's you were talking about the significant others, the significant others of the main characters, and it occurred to me as I was watching it last night that it's not like those characters are wrong. Mark and Lake are never wrong, not once throughout the entire thing. They're not right, but they're not wrong, So what do you think about it?
Well, I'll tell you my rating. It was 8.7 out of 10, so just a point behind yours. There were things that I felt like they could have done better. I love this film, although I confess when I first watched it, I hated it, and you told me to give it a chance, and that's what I had to do.
You just have to wait until the Dirty Pinks start playing.
Yeah, and I feel like I have to tell everybody that. Just let it get to this one particular scene, and you actually might like this film, because even though they're selfish and obnoxious, you might just love them. And if you've ever been to a music festival before, you might just love the visceral nature of this film. I mean, it was filmed over 5 days in 2010 at T in the Park in Scotland, and so you can really see that the actors have to sort of react to everything that's going on there at the festival. Everything. It's not planned shots. They can storyboard all they want and everything, but there's going to be things that just come up. And that's the thing about a music festival is it doesn't matter. You could go to Coachella every year, but it's going to be a different experience every year. You could go to any music festival, Riot Fest, what have you, and it's always going to be a different experience. And this movie sort of captures that. It's sort of a microcosm moment. The problem with it is that because this movie is such a collection of scenes, they have to get from one scene to the other with a ton of fantastic B-roll in between. They only had the one night as far as the story is concerned. It's just one night together, right?
Mm-hmm.
At times it's almost morning, and then at times it's like the middle of the night, and it doesn't make sense as far as the
some of the editing is a little choppy, and I really do feel like they could have made sure that timeline wise those shots made sense, but I mean, that's what you get when you film something in 5 days.
Yeah, and you get to see some great performances from bands they're playing at T in the Park, like Newton Faulkner and the Proclaimers, and it's really cool to see.
Oh, yeah.
The Dirty Pinks are a fictitious band that Morello is the lead singer / keyboard player of, and they're awesome.
They're
I
epic.
would actually see them.
They are so epic, and I think it's made me fall in love with Tainted Love by Soft Cell, for sure. And then it's made me fall in love even deeper with, what's her name? Natalia.
Yep.
Yeah. Just because it's one thing to see her kind of be in a fantastical world, but when she's just down to earth and just playing like a selfish kind of, very realistic human being who's not, steaming and growing pink hair. It's really interesting to just watch her be a real person. which I really enjoyed. So, and You Instead is probably, which is the British name of the movie, is most likely a reference to the first song even played in the movie.
Yeah, they're playing it in the back of a car acoustically.
Which sounds so much better.
Yeah.
At the beginning than it does when they play it on stage.
They're an electronic band. Like, it's just not our style.
Yeah.
If it's your style, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just overall, a pretty decent film. They picked good actors who knew how to be in a band. And I thought the story was pretty interesting, because they're just running around trying to find the prophet or find something to cut these handcuffs off. And I won't spoil a lot of things for it, but I really do think that people would like it. So overall, 8.7 out of 10 for me.
9.7 for me.
And we're going to go ahead and segue into our last film in the Best of the Rest segment.
So I decided that for New Year's Eve, I wanted to watch the movie New Year's Eve. So I did that. And we decided to use that for our Best of the Rest.
Yeah, it's not because either of us really loved it or really hated it.
Yeah, it was topical.
I don't know. It was a bad movie that we can talk about it, but this is a movie that's directed by Gary Marshall. People know him from the legendary Princess Diaries 1 and 2.
Yeah,
so if that was a part of your childhood,
the best movies ever.
The lady that wrote it, her name is Catherine Fugate.
She actually won an award, or I don't know if she won or was nominated for worst screenplay
for this particular film. For New Year's Eve.
And that was a Razzies award, I think.
In 2011 when this film came out, or 2012.
2012, I'm going to assume. Because it came out on the very tail end. It came out December 6th, 2011.
So it's probably 2012.
Yeah.
And she's also the writer of Valentine's Day, The Prince and Me. I think she also wrote, what's the other one? Mother's Day?
Oh, most likely.
These two particular writer and director are involved in all of those day films, except for Love Actually, which is what they were.
Yeah, pretty much started it, So I just want to get through the numbers here really quick in case anyone's interested. This actually, shockingly enough, was the longest runtime of the 3 movies we watched last night. It had an hour and 58-minute runtime of just ridiculousness. The box office actually made 142 million USD. And the budget was 56 million USD. So it actually made its money back, which is really shocking because this is not that great of a movie. What was I gonna say? Oh, it has a rating of PG-13, which I fully agree with. Metascore of 22. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 7%. That's how bad this movie is. IMDb gave it 5.7 out of 10. So I think mainly people just kind of enjoyed it. Enjoyed the awfulness.
Well, I want to speak to that a little bit later when I sort of give my review.
Do you want to go ahead and give the plot?
Yeah, if I can. It's a very hard plot to talk about. I mean, obviously, it's just a bunch of people sort of coming together for New Year's Eve. That's the easiest way that I can say it. But you have, let me name out all the actors and actresses that are in this film. You have Michelle Pfeiffer, Zac Efron. You also have Robert De Niro, Halle Berry, Carrie Ells, Alyssa Milano, Common, Barbara Marshall, Jessica Biel, Seth Meyers, Sarah Paulson, Till Schweiger, Carla Gugino. It's Gugino. Ross Ryman, Katherine Heigl, John Bon Jovi, Sofia Vergara, Russell Peters. I'm continuing. Ashton Kutcher, Lea Michele, Jim Belushi. Yes, I'm reading these off of IMDb because there were so many people in this film. Sarah Jessica Parker, Abigail Breslin. Okay. I believe those are all the A-list actors.
Well,
no. Josh Duhamel was also in it. Forgot about him. Larry Miller. Oh my gosh. This movie is so full of so many people.
And of course,
Oh, and Hilary Swank.
Oh, yeah, that too.
And Ludacris.
And
I don't know who you're...
Mr. Buellerton.
Oh, yeah, that was the worst cameo ever.
Matthew Broderick was in it.
Also makes an appearance.
And his name is Mr. Buellerton. Guys, this is real.
So you have Katherine Heigl, who is a catering manager, and she's catering this event that John Bon Jovi's character is playing at, and they used to be lovers, but now they're no longer lovers, and so it's unrequited love that will eventually work itself all out at the end of New Year's Eve. You have Ashton Kutcher, the pessimist, who wants to stay in his apartment but gets stuck in an elevator with Lea Michele, and they have the weirdest meet cute ever. You have Michelle Pfeiffer and Zac Efron. Zac Efron's trying to get these tickets from Michelle Pfeiffer and takes her on this resolution tour around the city. What else am I missing? Josh Duhamel's character, which is by far one of my favorite segments until the very end of it, is at a wedding out not in New York City and decides...
And who the hell is getting married on New Year's Eve, by the way? That was so frustrating to me.
They get married the morning of New Year's Eve. There's no one there. Anyway, so then he gets into a precarious situation with his vehicle and has to ride with another family in an RV into the city. Oh, also there's Sarah Jessica Parker in there with her daughter, who's played by Abigail Breslin. Sarah Jessica Parker should have plans on New Year's Eve, but she was very protective of her daughter. Did you mention
the hospital one?
I'll get to that. Okay. She should have plans on New Year's Eve, but she wants to spend it with her daughter. And so she chooses to try to spend it with her daughter, but her daughter sneaks out so she can go to Times Square and see the ball drop. And then, by far, the most warming and overwhelming segment was the one with Robert De Niro, who was in the hospital, and he has no one to come care for him on New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. Carrie Ellis is the doctor, and Halle Berry is trying to... I don't know how to say his name. Is that
Carrie Ellis? No, I was just laughing.
Well, and Halle Berry is the nurse that Halle Berry is the nurse that decides to stay with him until midnight. So, and obviously, as you get closer to the ball dropping, everything gets more and more
melded together.
Yeah, and heartwarming and beautiful and blah blah blah. So, go ahead if you want.
We may or may not have both cried during watching this movie. So I want to say, first of all, that I don't know what it is about this director, but this director is, for some reason, super duper in love with New York, almost to the point where it feels like New York is sucking its own. That was the worst part about it. It's just that over the head, hitting me over the head sensation of, oh my gosh, guys, look at New York. Oh, haha, so many New York references. I totally get that because I'm from freaking Colorado. So I gave this a 6.5 out of 10. I really thought there was so much bad stuff in there, but ultimately it kind of felt a little heartwarming and sweet. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I didn't enjoy a lot of the segments. It felt like, well, you made the comment about the hospital segment that...
Oh, yes, I had made the comment that I felt like the hospital segment was actually written by a different human being because it was so heartwarming and it was so, it had full emotions. And the characters didn't feel so one-dimensional to me. They actually felt like real characters, like I was watching a real movie. So, yeah.
Well, I felt like a lot of the segments were unbelievable. I wanted to I love almost everyone in this film, and I wanted to get under the surface and really like them, but I couldn't connect with any of their characters. I couldn't connect with anyone in the film. It felt unrealistic, and of course, at the end of the film, with the countdown to the new year and everything, like Love Actually and any other movie like this, it exploits that real human emotion that surrounds a holiday and the feelings we get for family and for friends and for new love and possible changes in our lives. And because of that, at the end of the film, you're so voting for everybody, and you have a little tear in the corner of your eye, except for one person, Sarah Jessica Parker.
We don't like her.
And it's just, it's one of those. It's just a popcorn trash movie. It wasn't
really
terrible.
Is trash.
It wasn't good. It was something I'm not gonna watch again next year.
Well, and it's simple things that I feel like could have been fixed really easily. Like the exposition was so awkward in some of those moments, especially Josh Duhamel being at his brother's wedding. Is that what it was? His brother's wedding, and he's like, I know that this is hard and this is hard, but don't worry, you'll find love too. And it was like, why am I watching this movie? Just like audio tape the exposition for me. Done. And even the editor didn't even try. There was that god awful moment where the woman was holding the dog, and at first it was like on her shoulder, and then she was carrying it like a baby, and then on her shoulder again. And it was the director or was the editor like drunk when he did that or something?
Felt like everybody was drunk that was involved in this film.
It really did. It felt really bad.
And on that note, the more drinks we had, the better the movie felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Maybe that's the secret to movies like that.
And like even the acting kind of felt like watching a high school production, because it was like, especially with Katherine Heigl when she was like, I've been thinking about that slap for a year and you were gone before I even got us groceries. And it felt like watching a 17-year-old who didn't quite understand what she was saying, like reciting those lines.
Yeah, it definitely did.
It was a little embarrassing. I felt kind of sad. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 5.1 out of 10, and that was gracious.
It got that extra 0.1 point.
I feel like that was gracious. Honestly, I should have gotten a 4.9, but
yeah. But after Hilary Swank's speech about like we have to give pause.
To some regard, I like that, and that they definitely pulled on the heartstrings with the Halle Berry moment. I don't even want to spoil that.
The Halle Berry moment, the Robert De Niro moment, all of that. Just the hospital scene, guys. Watch the hospital scene.
Yeah, if you can watch any part of that film without watching the rest of it, it's basically the hospital scene.
Yeah.
So.
Although the thing that I did like is that they made Carrie Ells, and this is post Saw world. They made Carrie Ells a doctor, and the whole time I'm just going, oh, this is obviously before he gets into that murder death trap in Saw. Right? Because that's what I want to see. I want to see him walking up to John's room after that and being like, oh, you have cancer, screw off. And then he ends up in the torture chamber. So that's, I don't know. Like, in a movie like that knows it's not that great, should not be reminding me of better movies I'd rather be watching.
That's true. And they even reference at one point, what's her name? Carla Gugino? The weird doctor.
Oh, yeah.
She in the outtakes, she's got the DVDs from Valentine's Day. And it's just, it was referencing other bad movies and almost like making fun of their own world.
Their own trash movie.
So overall, not a great film. Part of the best of the rest, because you may still enjoy it at the end. You may even find yourself watching it on TV or any other time that it comes on next year.
Or just watching it sometime when you're really drunk and you're like, you know what movie I haven't seen in a while that might be kind of tolerable. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to email us at couplesmovienight@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to try and read your responses on air.
Yeah, feel free to leave some comments on our blog here. We'll also have a Facebook up. It will be something where, like, this episode in particular is very long. I feel like the next couple of episodes will be really, really a lot shorter because we just needed to introduce ourselves. So thank you for stopping by and giving it a chance. We hope that this new year is as awesome for you guys as it is for us. And
second chances never expire, guys.
Exactly. And thanks for listening to Couples Movie Night.